Welcome to HirewithEve.ai podcast. HirewithEve.ai is an AI tool to pre-screen candidates and accurately identify their skills to help you cut down your hiring time by 90%. In this podcast series, we interview and have in-depth conversations with global HR leaders across industries and geographies to understand current HR trends, leadership challenges, workforce plannings, and many more interesting topics. So with that, let's dive into today's conversation. Hello, everyone, to today's podcast. I'm Rahul Abhisek, the founder of HirewithEve.ai. Our today's guest is Mr. Prashant Srivastava. Prashant is an IIM Ahmedabad graduate from the batch of 1990, and since then he has gone on to leading several prestigious organizations. He has worked with the Nielsen as an associate research director, then moving on to the managing partner of India at Gallup, and then the partner of engagement and culture at Aon Hewitt, and then president of Group HR and People Excellence at Reliance Group, and is now currently the chief executive officer of WE Matters. So, Prashant, welcome to today's podcast. You've obviously had a very illustrious career. So, could you start by telling us a bit about your journey in your own words?
Thank you, Rahul. Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast show. And I, uh, I'm really happy to be here, and I am uh, ready to answer your questions.
Course, of course. So why don't we start with, in your own words, if you can tell us how have you gone, how has your journey been within the domain of HR? I understand you started your career as within the domain of research, and now you have your own company or leading WE Matters. So how has these kind of career progressed?
So, research was a very, very small stint. My majority of the career before I switched to employee engagement, well-being, and HR was into strategy consulting.
Okay.
So I was consulting with a French consulting firm, which was specializing in India entry strategy. So I had the opportunity of learning from Mr. Michelin of Michelin Tires and Mr. Hewitt of Hewitt Office Furnitures and Mr. Perfetti of Perfetti and so on and so forth. Uh, Having done that for a long time, I decided to move to core strategy consulting and I moved to Tata Strategic Management Group, where again I spent several years advising both the group companies as well as companies outside the group, and it was a wonderful learning. And at that point in time, I realized that some of the consulting assignments are implemented very well, and some of them, while received very well at the boardroom, but are in the boardroom, but they're not implemented. When I went back to the clients, I realized that the key difference between the two organizations was that there was a perfect alignment in leadership and there was very high energy level in the individual contributors to implement these strategies. And the others lacked both. And that's how I realized the importance of employee engagement and leadership engagement. And I thereafter had an opportunity to move to Gallup, and I have stayed with that ever since. And my last assignment before I started this firm was as the group CHRO of Reliance, where I had the opportunity to implement everything that I had learned and learn more through the implementation, understand the implementation challenges, and finally combining my consulting knowledge, strategy knowledge, and the implementation uh, learning, I set this up. And here we are. We are amongst the top two in the country, and The team wants to be among the top five in the world, and yeah, we are growing leaps and bounds.
Wow. Wow. And that's a fantastic story and journey. Uh, so Prashant, we often ask our guests, and we also believe in this, is that HRs are the superhero of the organization. They play a very key critical role in shaping and making the organization. But from your point of view, if you would have to think, what are the key kind of superpowers that a person within the HR domain has, and then perhaps you can also highlight some of the weaknesses that the particular domain or the people working in the domain you've observed having.
So let me uh, share my point of view.
Of course.
So business even today is driven by the CEO and by someone who can sell, right? So call him head of sales, chief sales officer, chief business officer, whatever be the designation. Uh, he drives the business. He brings in the dollars and he costs the job,
Hmm.
right? So it's a misgiving that anybody, whether the CHRO or the CFO or anybody, can call the shot.
Of course.
Uh, that said, there are two key and critical resources for any business. One is the financial resources, and second is the human resource. Now, today, in the current scenario, every company which has arrived has access to financial resources, or every company which is a meaningful player in their industry has access to financial resources, and we've developed very sophisticated system to efficiently deploy the financial resources, right? That I think is no longer the challenge, and therefore it's no longer the competitive advantage. All like size and uh, similar situation kind of competitors have access to capital, and having access to capital is necessary to be in the business, but doesn't give an edge over competition, doesn't help you get your market share, etc. Now that's where the human resource is the differentiating factor. And that's where when CHROs effectively help the person who's building business or help the person who's delivering business is when the CHRO can get into driving seat rather than a support seat. Uh, so, how does one get into driving a competitive edge through people? I think basic is that you have right? But that's pretty basic, right? Uh, I'm not saying that every company has gotten it right, but a lot of HR functions have focused on hiring and they've got it reasonably right, right? Now the problem is you've got the resources on board working for you. The next big problem and a combination of problems is how do you get the best out of this challenge? Because if you have superior challenge and if you can get the best out of the challenge compared to competition, that's your edge. And that is an edge that is difficult to manage. So the value of hiring right, your organization understands better and that's what you're playing on. But beyond that, it's a question of uh, getting a best and retaining the challenge. Otherwise, it could be a revolving door. How does one do it? I think super critical is the engagement level of people
Yes.
and engaging people, creating employee experience that is unparalleled ensures that people deliver and engage customers and ensures that you have an edge over competition. You get higher market share. You get higher profitability, uh, and therefore better market cap and better share price or valuation in case of startups like yours and mine. So now, if you just engage, you could create country clubs where people are engaged but not delivering.
Mm.
Ideally, that should not happen, but yeah, that happens because the world is not ideal. So
Yeah.
then there's also a question of in parallel focusing on performance. If you engage and focus on performance, and that's where the magic in terms of both productivity, performance, output happens, right? That's what has to be done every quarter, every month, every year. Engage, help them perform. Engage, help them perform. Form, engage. But over time, people have to also grow to stay engaged.
Right.
And therefore, some amount of capability development is required. And not just for people, but the industry is changing and changing significantly. And therefore, if the capability of the people does not improve, the organization's capability does not improve. And if that happens, then somewhere the competition, if they are improving their capability, start taking over, right? And hence, I think one is hiring. Having hired their three components, engaging, ensuring performance, and capability development. If we manage this triangle well, that's where the magic is. And
Yeah.
that's where the HROs can contribute hugely to the business.
Yeah. 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 Uh, so, I mean, that's a great framework. Engage, measure performance, and then improve capability. Perhaps one more pointer within this framework would be how to acquire great talent. What is your thought? Like, how should companies go about identifying, then attracting great talent, or then making
Correct.
once they've
Yeah.
acquired them, making them great?
So the last bit is again, or the
I think,
first bit, let's
yeah,
start from first, that how do you acquire? Now, there are two components. One, you said, how do you attract? And second, you said, how do you get or kind of identify the best from what you've attracted?
correct,
Now, it has to be a combination. How do you attract is again, how strong is your employer brand, how strong is your employee value proposition, and how effectively one has developed employee value proposition. And that's where there is uh, not just developed and then how effectively has it been communicated and implemented.
correct,
Uh, on the other side, no, it's a question of identifying the behavioral and the functional competencies for each role, and then having a methodology like event based interviewing technique where one can identify or assess both the behavioral and the functional competencies, which will help recruiting the right candidate, right? I have heard enough that, Prashant, he's a tiger, recruit him. or like, I feel he's useless. And my question to everyone has been that, hey, please define your tiger, and please define your useless candidate, right? It can't be because you feel so, but it has to be objective and based on objective criteria. And these objective criteria assessed through uh, evidence of events. It can't be stories told by candidates, but these stories have to be pressure tested.
Right.
No. So that is on your attracting and then selecting, and then you said retaining. Now, retaining is again back to engagement. If employees are engaged, if the experience with the company is great, they will stay. And if that is not so, then they will not stay.
Right. 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 So, great. It makes a lot of sense. Now, we have this framework. In your now years of experience, what are some of the core kind of then mistakes that you've seen people do, either under pressure, time crunch, etc., again within the domain of HR, that you wish can be corrected?
Hmm. So the common mistake, if I start with hiring, is that now every hiring team is busy. Just a sec. Every hiring team is busy uh, busy making sure that the uh, vacancies are filled, and the tendency is that it doesn't matter what happens after that, but the positions should be struck out from the Excel sheet or from the list of open positions. There's a lot of pressure to fill the positions, and at that stage, it doesn't matter whether the person that is hired will actually succeed in the role or not. It matters to get that position out of the pending list. So I'm not saying that happens in every organization, but it happens in a number of organizations, and that's where there's a challenge, and that's where I'm sure you're also going through a challenge that nobody wants an additional filter because an additional filter slows down the speed of hiring. And that's one challenge right at the beginning. Second challenge that the HR faces is when the business says that should we perform or should we engage? And my answer has been that definitely perform, don't bother about engaging. As long as you can sustain performance without engaging.
And
You can beat up people and get them to perform, but then you can't sustain it in today's world. Sorry, you're asking.
yeah, I was just asking, what do you mean by perform here? So make the people perform.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, business heads say that, I have so much target, and if I focus on engagement, I'll miss my target. And my submission is please meet your target. That's most important. But if you think you can sustain meeting your target without engaging your team, please go ahead and do it and see for yourself what happens to you and to your business.
Of course.
And in all probability, you will be checked out because you will be blamed for the attrition and you will stop meeting your targets. So decide. And engagement to me is not a separate activity. Engagement is a way of doing business. So if you don't change your way of doing business, then you're neither going to engage nor going to perform after a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the second challenge. The third challenge is, uh, which I don't blame businesses, and I don't blame people either, but it's just a situation. Businesses, at least some of them and a lot of them, have become very knee jerk in terms of dealing with people, and people get hired and fired very frequently. And therefore, people have become transactional. Now, if businesses are not sure how long the people are going to stay, the investment in learning and capability development reduces. Everyone wants to buy talent rather than build talent,
Yeah.
right? Uh, can't blame people because uh, a lot of employers don't treat them well. When it comes to tough times, the first casualty is people. So, and I just can't blame employers because finally they should have the money to pay. If they don't have the money to pay, how can they retain? So, I guess it's um, it's a vicious circle, and somewhere it has to be broken. I don't know when, where, how. But these are three problems: hurry to hire, at all costs, and engagement versus performance, and investment in capability building, focus on buying talent rather than building talent.
Sense. Makes sense. Great. Now, over the decades, and you've seen the industry in the 90s and then the early 2000 and so on, and the theme of our decade, this particular decade, is AI. How have you seen the workflow, the disruption in the workflow rather, with addition of more and more tech within the workflow, and now AI? So can you open up and share your thoughts on this aspect?
So while see, tech certainly has enabled businesses, right? And the disruption, I mean, I don't think there's any disruption, right? Somebody who was building business based on inefficiencies of the system and was seeking rent, they disrupted, right? Uh, somebody who was already uh, addressing inefficiencies and building business on addressing inefficiencies, they're enabled, they're not disrupted, right? And therefore they are disrupting. But yeah, complacency has no room, whether it is tech or any other kind of change in the way of doing business. If you're complacent, if you're not learning, if you're not a learning organization, that's not taking you. So, so that certainly is an issue. Uh, if learning agility of the organization and individuals is not high, and the what was your second part of the question?
Yeah, I mean, the workflow being disrupted.
Okay,
And
the second part was AI. Now, I would think AI is hugely overhyped. We use a lot of AI, right? Uh, that is quite enabling. But what the media makes out of AI and generative AI, etc., talking to some professors who are involved in developing AI in the West, uh, what they're saying is that what the media is talking and what is being done, there's a gap of 20 years.
yeah,
No, you using AI, how how much of AI is useful and how much of AI is hype, and how if you just leave it to AI without choosing your own algorithm, beyond a point AI starts going haywire.
yeah,
So there's huge amount of effort, and therefore people, and therefore algorithms, therefore statistics guys, therefore behavioral scientists, and therefore the technologists are required to keep the AI in control and channel the energy of AI in the desired direction rather than dissipating in different directions,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
which is not easy. Which is not easy unless you know your domain very well. I mean, those who are trying to build business only on AI, their business is going haywire because finally the output does not.
you require
I
human
mean, the,
intervention.
yeah, yeah. You require not just intervention, but you require huge amount of human knowledge. Without human knowledge, AI is like any other tech system, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah,
What you teach AI will, what the AI will do for you, right? I had a client and he said that, uh, can your generative AI generate new segments of employees? I said, see, if you're giving me demographics, can they generate new demographics? I said, definitely there's no generative AI who can generate new demographics. That's not going to happen.
yeah,
Finally, generative AI, the only difference between AI and generative AI is that generative AI is learning from millions of sources simultaneously, and therefore, probably it has something for you that is not already there in your data. It takes cues from your data and moves ahead. That's the difference between AI and generative AI. But if you do not have those cues built into your data, it's only going to give you some very gibberish. And no, you try writing an email,
yeah,
right? There's so much of gibberish stuff that comes out in OpenAI driven email that unless you can edit it properly,
yeah,
uh, or you set or you invest enough time and skill in setting the context for the AI and then again revising it, just an AI driven email draft, you can easily make out,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That is very
It's
true.
too much of words with little sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it is clear, obviously, that these large language models, AI models, are they produce words, and definitely it requires not just human intervention, but a lot of human attention to make it make sense. So, connected to that, then the question that I have is, what do you think are some of the new skills that the new age the career force who are joining the domain of HR should have in order to use also AI as a tool, but be able to do much better.
So it has to be a combination too. The domain knowledge cannot be replaced by any relevance, which is to me clear. I may be wrong, but that's my understanding, right? So you whether in HR or any other function, but yeah, let's stick to HR. A very strong domain knowledge is extremely important. Without a very strong domain knowledge and experience and research, you cannot effectively use LLM or AI, right? That's a must. So if we were not engagement consultants with 20, 30 years of experience, and we wanted to, which is what some of the youngsters are trying to do, we just wanted to use an LLM and produce action plans how to engage employees. It will be gibberish English with, you know, understand people dynamics. So the word dynamics, when I see four times in a text, I know that it is AI. It is OpenAI. When OpenAI does not understand anything, it uses the word dynamics.
Such words, exactly,
Right?
exactly.
So, that's primary. Once you have a hold on your subject, a mastery on your subject, learning AI, I mean, what AI has done, the LLMs have done, they've made it easy to use AI. It's not that they have made AI fantastic, but it has become easy to use. So, learning how to use AI, while it is certainly both a science and an art, but that's a easier science and an art which you can probably learn in 12 months. But mastering your domain, you can probably take 12 years.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of having a mastery on your domain and learning how to use AI. How to use AI is very critical, super critical. People don't know how to use AI. There are enough research papers, but it's not in commercial training that is available as to how to use these algorithms. So that's certainly a very important skill and must be learned, must be used, and practice will make a man perfect. So a combination of domain knowledge and how to use AI and LLMs.
Perfect, perfect. So, Prashant, so that was our last question for the podcast. I think that was extremely insightful, and the young audience should definitely listen and adhere to this. That an AI cannot do your job. You actually have to know the domain, and of course, leverage tool, but not the tool cannot do your job. So that was a great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, the tool is not replacing human being at least for next 20, 30 years. It is enabling human being, it is making him more efficient, effective, etc., etc. But it's no replacement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we can agree on that. So perfect. So thank you so much, Prashant, for your time again, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot for having me.